It's like my favourite line there. Right, is this going live? Yep, it's gone live immediately. Right, okay. Let's
We
check
make
if
things
it's
go.
working. We make things go.
We make things
That's
go
too
live.
loud.
Welcome to the live show. We're here at
Right,
Trek
okay.
Central. It's
Trek
a show tune. That's all I got. That's all
I was
got.
trying to back you up. I
I appreciate that. Thankfully, somebody is. Dominic's just laughing at me. Thank you.
Yep. Some days-
I mean, I was laughing at you too, but
Some days I wish I could resign, but then I'm in charge, so I can't. There's no getting out of this hell.
Yeah, fire me now, and I will troll you in the comments.
You can indirect me in your own chat. You can expose me if I do that.
That's right. I've got all.
I don't want. Why am I holding a drill in my hand? Hello, everyone. Welcome to TC Live for the 29th of November. I'm back again. Putting my drill down. Welcome to Trek Central Live. We're, of course, here. Oh, there's a donation already. Christ, you guys are fast. You know. Welcome to Trek Central Live. We're 29th of November. We're going to be discussing Star Trek Discovery Episode 7, Unification 3. We've got a lot to discuss today. A lot of great information about the latest episode and a lot to actually talk about as fantastic. And we're also going to be discussing the next upcoming episode, what we think of it, what we think is going to happen. I've forgotten what it's about the next week's episode because I've not watched the trailer properly. I've not watched a Ready Room clip, but we'll be discussing that at the end of the thing. Hopefully everyone else can carry the conversation, and you lot in the chat can remind me. But I should introduce my guests and hosts for tonight. Of course, I have Mr. Ketwolski. How are you doing, Nick?
Fantastic, good sir. Fantastic. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm loving the Christmas jumper, by the way. I feel like I need one as we go forward now into the weeks.
Merry
I'm jealous of it.
Christmas! That's right.
And we've got Dom over here, who is supporting more background posts now. Did you have those last week or not?
Yeah, I had those last week.
Did you?
I'm not in as festive a mood as Nick is.
Did we stream last week? I can't remember.
Yes, we streamed. We strammed.
I can't remember.
Strummed. I think it's strummed.
We strummed.
I think that's something else, to be honest. But yeah, welcome, Dom. I see you're now sporting a fashionable beard.
Yes, it's lockdown beard.
Yeah, you're going
Lockdown
to Shax's look, are you?
I like
Yeah,
that.
a bit. I can't remember if he did that. No, he didn't, did he? Oh, well. And of course, we've got our special guest, Jesse Gender here. Jesse, how are you doing? It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, I don't know if it's great to be. No, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm doing good.
Well, that's just
just throwing shade right at the top.
All right. Okay. Getting a little bit. There's a lot of fracturing going on.
I want to air out my drama. I'm gonna air out my drama right here in front of all of you. Ketwolski, I hate you.
That's fine. Bring it.
I mean,
I'll take
if
it.
it makes our metrics go up, let's get started. Right. So that other channel, no, I can't say that. Oh boy, it's been an interesting day. So. Let's discuss Episode 7, Unification. Now, this was a continuation, technically, of the Next Generation Unification in a way. And if you've watched the episode, you'll know that. If you haven't watched the episode, be warned, we are going to be discussing it in full. So spoilers will be present in this video, or live stream in this case, or video if you're watching it later. So you have been warned, turn away now, as we'll be discussing it in full. So diving straight into it, this episode... I enjoyed it. Not the best in my opinion. However, I did enjoy it. It was a nice Star Trek story. But Nick, as always, I'm going to go to you because I've not actually watched your review yet. So please do tell me what you thought of the latest episode, and then we'll go to Jesse and we'll go to Dom.
Okay, somebody just in the chat said my volume is painful compared to others. Is it painfully loud or painfully low? But I turned my mic down just in case.
It's just the sound of your voice in general is painful.
Oh, okay. I'll try to turn it
What's
down.
What's that song again? HMS Pinafore? Sing that one.
HMS Pinafore, yes. British. Okay, never mind. So
special.
I would say like my feelings on this episode are I like I did for my review video, I have to separate the Tilly situation from the rest of the episode because I have very strong personal feelings and reactions to what's going on with the XO, the first officer position on the Discovery, and I don't want it to take the rest of this episode. I liked the rest of this episode. I liked how they expanded on things that we were demonstrated inside of Picard. I like the expansion of the Quat Malant. I like the return of Gabrielle Burnham. I like all of the ideas of it being a sister sequel spinoff of Unifications 1 and 2. The only negative thing that I found from this episode really was I thought that the set piece for the whatever the science trial thing was called, I forget. I felt like that set piece was a little rushed because it was very clearly just the mess hall with all the tables removed. I felt like they could have done like a cave or something. I don't know.
The cave that everyone hangs out in Star Trek, that same cave.
Right, just a nice, lovely Star Trek cave, something easy. They already built a cave for the other episode. They could have just redone that one, filled in the pools. But Yeah, that was the only thing that I did not. I was like, you guys could have done something with that. It was a little whatever, but everything else I really, really enjoyed, and I super love the idea that the Romulans and Vulcans have been living together for a while, and I want to know more about all that. But yeah, overall episode was pretty good. That's
Very
it.
nice.
That's all.
So Jesse, we'll go to you next, and then we're going to start discussing specific topics after we've heard everyone's initial thoughts.
But Dom doesn't get anything to say.
Oh, he gets it next. He gets it next.
I pretty much have the same opinion as Ketwolski. It's pretty much, except for probably leaning a little bit more positive. With the Tilly situation, I also wasn't a big fan of it, but I'm kind of have a pause on my feelings on it until I see where it goes, because there is an acknowledgement within the episode of like, oh, she's still staying an ensign. It's just an acting position. So, maybe she'll be acknowledged that this is sort of like an unorthodox training thing. It really is going to come down to execution going forward for me. But I do agree. It's like, it's not something I was like super enthused about. It felt really weird and kind of forced by the writers to sort of like continue her arc. Going forward, it's like, oh, we need her to be a command trainer and continue her arc. So I am tepid on that, but everything else, I think I really, really loved. I think that this was a fun continuation of Unification, if not at like a direct sequel as it kind of was sold as. And I loved all the
spin-off. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that there was just what I really loved most about the episode is that it kind of interwove all the different sections of Star Trek, like from going back to the original series, going to the TNG era, going into even the modern era with Picard. So like it was just like all these little touchstones throughout Star Trek in this one episode, and it really felt like a unification of all those things. Plus, I also like courtroom dramas. I'm a huge courtroom drama nerd, so anything that's kind of similar to that, I always enjoy. So
very nice. And Dom, your thoughts?
So I really like this episode. I will say I was a little meh on the Tilly stuff, but talking about it more in other streams and just watching the episodes again, I'm kind of more okay with it. Just going from if JJ Kirk can go from cadet to captain, I'm fine with Tilly going from ensign to acting XO. I'm fine with it. But we'll see where it goes in later episodes.
It's actually a great point I didn't even think about.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. It was dumb in 2009, and it's dumb now.
We'll get into it in a minute.
No. I know. I agree. Dumb. It's dumb then and dumb now. It is both.
I crossed my arms.
It is dumb then and dumb now, but I accepted that. I can accept this. Anyway, sorry.
But I really did love the world building which this episode did.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Nivar and the fact that it does come from a pre-existing Vulcan art form for seeing things from two perspectives. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
It just made me want to see a lot more from this place. I want to see the planet. How has it changed? How has the architecture changed? Do we have the Vulcan spire cities combined with the Romulan circular cities? That'd be cool. Just I want more. And whether books will fill that in, short treks, or more stuff in Discovery, I would love it. So yeah, that's my thoughts for this.
The episode provided a lot of substance in the short time frame it was actually giving us. It was there to obviously talk about, the Byrne and also Michael Burnham's struggle and acquiring with data. But even so, it gave us a lot of substance and a lot to think about when it comes to the planet of Nivar, which was nice to know it was actually something. They've not just thrown a word together and thought, yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds sci-fi. Let's name it that. There was actually substance and reasoning behind it. Now, I suppose we should probably talk about the Tilly situation, as I think that's a big thing that's on everyone's mind. When I first saw that, I wasn't particularly pleased with it because as someone who usually obsesses over who's the commander on a ship and who's the chief engineer and stuff like that, I like that type of lore because I'm very much into that myself personally. I know many others in the Star Trek fandom are. They love to know, who the ship hierarchy is. I mean, Nick, me and you were debating the other day if Culber was actually the chief medical officer or not, of which is still up in the air whether it's actually true or not. At the minute, nobody really knows. So when it comes down to should Tilly be first officer, it is a question in a way. It is something which gets brought up quite a lot because typically I would say a second officer would now take over, or the next highest ranked officer would become who's first officer naturally. Though you look at it on the other page, of the other side of a hand, a first officer is typically someone who's trusted by the captain to take command of a ship if they're incapacitated or unavailable, or someone who can be trusted to run the show essentially when they're off, not on a ship. Hence why Sue put Michael Burnham in charge, because he truly trusts her before she went off on her own little adventure. Tilly he does trust, so it makes sense that he'd go to her. However, I feel like it does invalidate a few of the other crew members who, have worked really hard to attain their ranks and also, their positions, etc. It's like, oh wait, I was expecting Stamets to maybe turn around and say something else, but he's really happy for it, which I don't know. It kind of surprised me because Stamets as a character himself, when you look at his reaction, he always took me as like a career man, but I guess he's changed at season 1 when he was obviously obsessed with his work, etc. Now it's like, he's a different type of person, maybe. I don't know. Obviously, there's a big discussion to be had here. Some of you guys on my stream right now, agree with Tilly being first officer. Some don't. So, Jess, I'm going to go to you first because I know Nick's got a strong opinion. But what do you thought about Tilly becoming XO?
I mean, yeah, I'll just reiterate what I said before. Is I really think it's going to come down to execution going forward on her character, because again, if it is played like, all right, she's going to be 100% promoted to first officer and she's the first officer going forward on the show, I will call BS on that. But if it is like in a way like them trying to say like, oh, because of the weirdness of these circumstances that we're in, this is your chance to like basically get your command training program, in the field. It's a weird way to do it. Don't get me wrong, but I could at least buy that a little bit more than like, yeah, she's going to be first officer now. And like I also said too, it's like, it's clearly just the writers trying to figure out a way to continue Tilly's arc and kind of forcing it this way, because there's no other like real natural way to do it other than like maybe putting her in the command training program in this new Starfleet, which would seem like a whole different sidetrack. So what else are you going to do besides give her a command position like that, which is going to inherently jump her up? It's just one of those like I feel like the writers are kind of aware like they need to speed up her arc a little bit, because they from day one her whole setup was like, I want to be captain. So that the arc of her character is, by the end of the show, she'll be captain or heading towards being captain. So how do you keep doing that season by season? And they just didn't have a natural way to do it this year because they jumped ahead to the future, so they don't have the command training program anymore, which is clearly what they were going to do with her had they stayed in the 23rd century. And so this is just the way that they were going to do that. So there's clearly like a forcing of the arc there with as a writer. And I think it can be okay depending on how they execute it. But if they do make her full on first officer, that will be kind of BS. The only other thing I'll say on it too, and Kat, you might have some more opinions on this than I do, but the thing I always thought about Starfleet is like, it's a military, but it's clearly not like a military in the way that we see the military today. Like, it's definitely structured and has slightly different goals. So I think stuff like this is a bit less insane in that sort of structure, but it's still very weird, even given what we've seen throughout Star Trek. So.
An
I'll let
interesting
Dom
couple
go.
of points there.
Yeah.
Before we jump to Dom a second, thank you to
You're ready, Ketwolski. I can just see you.
For our $2 donation. Vance reaction Tilly should be entertaining. Yeah, I'm interested to see Admiral Vance's reaction if he has one. Tom K says, for the record, I like this episode. Good to hear. And guys, make sure to share your opinions with us via the chat. We're always excited to hear them. Sean Casey donates $10 or £10, sorry. He says, I'm getting bored of disco. Every episode is angst and tears dropped with Michael Burnham solving every problem. I'm desperate for it to come, but at the moment, the Mando is streets ahead. So frustrating. I think we'll discuss specifics of that question and statement.
I have many thoughts on that comment in a kind way, but
and I think we'll discuss more of that as we go later on. But Dom, your thoughts on Tilly first, if you don't mind.
So I also remembered another situation, which was in Lower Decks recently. Mariner was brought up to be.
I know. Don't worry. I've heard all the bullshit arguments already. Go ahead.
But yeah, like has been said, I don't think I can say anymore. Just I need to see where this goes. I think it will be just acting XO, and then Burnham will probably come back as commander at the end of the season. That's probably how it's gonna go. So we've just got to see where it leads.
Come on, Nick, tell us your thoughts. Come on, Ketwolski.
You just burst at the seams.
Listen. All right, so I'll address. So the Kirk situation in Star Trek 2009 was stupid. We, as the audience members, accepted it because we know who Captain Kirk is. But in the context of that movie, it's literally dumb. And it was dumb then. And then the way that he becomes captain is also like some kind of mafioso family line hereditary construct. Well, he made him first officer. That's. Yeah, no, ridiculous. It was very bizarre. That was
Field promotions. Come on.
yeah. Everyone's getting them. Everyone's getting them. Right.
Except for Ensign Kim.
Yeah. No. He gets. If anything, he gets a field demotion.
Cadet.
So that was dumb. The situation with Mariner was a specialized situation that was only going to last during the duration of their visiting captain, their guest captain, which was only a few days. And the whole point of that was they had a simple mission to drop off some supplies or whatever. And it was really about that individual character, which was Mariner's friend, to interview her for a position on her ship. There was a specific start and end date. There was a specific small mission focus. And Mariner has also had what can only be described as a massive experience of doing all sorts of different things that she demonstrated throughout the entirety of the season of her extraordinary capabilities. And she's clearly well connected with not only extremely popular Klingon ambassadors, but also Captain Riker. There's a wild difference between the experience of Mariner and Tilly. They're not the same level. They're not at the same level. It's not a comparable situation. Do you have something to say, Dominic?
No, I just find it weird that we're getting into power levels of ensigns.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I would throw out, if we're talking about extenuating circumstances, they did jump like 1,000 years in the future, and it's kind of made clear that they can only promote from within. They can't really take on, because they're like, no, it's our own crew. They made this whole point of like, it's our own crew. We're not bringing anyone else in. Like 2 or 3 episodes ago. So it's weird that it's still Tilly, not like one of the 5 people on the bridge.
They all 80 crew members jumped into the future. It wasn't just Tilly jumping. All right,
but they all said say yes. So clearly they're all cool with it. So
yeah,
I'm not suggesting that her friends aren't being supportive of her, which I get the message, and it was a nice message at the end. The problem that I have is that the role of the first officer, even in a temporary assignment, and this I assume is temporary, hopefully, maybe not. Maybe they're going to write her in as a permanent first officer. I don't know. Right now I believe Dom is correct in saying that she'll go back to what she was doing, and then Michael will take over as first officer later on. But potentially not. The more we're talking about it, the Adira character has essentially replaced Tilly's role inside of the engineering room that Stamets works at. So that gives her less things to do there. So her as a character and as an actress needs other things to do. Michael Burnham's sheet of things is literally the longest list in the world. So giving her a little bit of that, they could potentially leave her there permanently.
Yeah.
And go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry.
So it's Starfleet. People who say that Starfleet is not a military organization, I think are they're right and wrong. They're a military organization when they want to be, and then they're not a military organization when they back themselves into non-military organizational constructs. And then they say, "Oh, what are you talking about? We're not a military. We're Starfleet." And that exists both in the meta for us as fans and in the universe for the characters. It's something that they like to change all around.
Just to interject in your mind, could we argue?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm on my fire and brimstone. Sorry, go ahead.
Could we argue that Starfleet is a military organization when it needs to be, for example? So the Dominion War, arguably Starfleet is then a military organization because they're beating the shit out of everything. However, in say the early days, or even in the early days of the Next Generation, when the Enterprise first turns up, you could say the military because they've just done the Cardassian conflict in a way, and they're already out there trying to stop civil wars between Klingons, etc., and everything else. The only time when I guess Starfleet are not a military organization, maybe just after Kirk's resolution of the Klingons, stuff like that, maybe after the Klingon War, they start hiring down, because Starfleet actually, as a scientific thing, has a bloody lot of conflicts when you think about it. Even in like the early days of the NX program, they literally had the 4-year war of the Romulan-style empire, which, you know, caused a lot of stuff. After that, I guess they go back to being exploration, etc. But like you just hit it on the head there, you know, Nick. They are a military organization when they want to be, but also not at the same time. It's like, well, we're not today, but, you know, I mean, even in Picard, are they still arguably probably more militarized then? I mean, look at all their new starships. They're made not for exploration, they're made to kick the shit out of something, you know?
Yes,
as
those were not exploration ships. Those were badass, kick-ass ships. Those were battleships.
My opinion on it has always been like, that Starfleet is 100% a military organization, but and as I said, it's like, but the understanding of what the military is that we have now is different in that time. At least that's how I kind of headcanoned it. It's like they do like military functions that we think of now almost incidentally. Like their main goal is what's the ad aspera or I forget the Latin phrase or whatever it is.
Who knows,
Ad
lads?
astra.
Yeah. So like their goal is like, through hardships to the stars. So it's always about like getting through hardships and going through to exploration. So goal number 1, exploration. Number 2 is blowing stuff up. I mean, we also see throughout Star Trek, like the Federation would be much more willing to like treaty themselves into oblivion than have any sort of military
True. I'm not
complex,
suggesting that they wouldn't enjoy not doing military stuff. And I guess that's kind of the difference is a military is focused on combat and diplomacy being kind of not necessarily equal, more combat, a little bit diplomacy, where Starfleet, I think, right, if they could resolve all of their problems through treaty and discussions, they would, but they obviously they can't. So anyways, all that to say, in a military organization, to promote your one of your lowest ranking and one of your least experienced officers to the XO of the ship, which is arguably one of the most senior positions on board there. Right. It is the senior position, second only to that of the captain, to promote someone that has no management experience, little leadership experience, little away time, very, very, very little, experience leading a department or managing a team or whatever, to the XO who now manages all of the departments, all of the team leads, all of the shifts, all the personnel, all the problems, all the shift scheduling, the bunk swaps, the issues with managing the ship's photon torpedo counts or whatever. You're promoting somebody that had a small scientific focus to now leading the entire starship overnight essentially sidelining your other officers for that because it just looks cool, I think, on paper and on the screen. It was just unbelievable for me. It took me out of the
complete. It could have been a chance to develop more I mean, if they wanted to, they could have developed more bridge characters. I mean, we discussed, week 1, it's like, Don's post has fallen down. We used like Lieutenant Nielsen there. Lieutenant Nielsen seems to be the second officer.
He doesn't like this conversation.
That post, I'm out of here. We discussed this the other week. It's like Lieutenant Nielsen could have been like the other officer, essentially, because she seems to be on the bridge watch all the time. A bit like we compare it back to Enterprise, Malcolm Reed was always sat in the chair, when Trip, Hall and Archer were gone, so he was like the second officer with regards, unless Trip was there. So it's like, they could have done Nielsen or Reese or something like that. They could have done them more, but I get, they have to give Tilly something to do. And it's maybe a thing where Discovery maybe has too many characters right now, which could be a bit of an issue. We've come to this new timeline, which is great and all, because we needed it, but now there's almost too many people to play with, and having these big casts can be very, very hard when you've got shows this. I really wouldn't be surprised if it's gone down again, if we could see like another character maybe leave the show or leave the ship to go off to do something else. I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw that by the end of the season in order to free up more space, because Discovery wants to develop the bridge crew in a way. They're trying to do that subtly, in season 3 and the end of season 2. But they've not really got room to do it in a way. You can't have room to these dedicated episodes on these characters when they don't really have much to do. You think of Discovery's not normal. It's not like the Next Gen when we had a helm officer, we had an ops officer, chief of security, a chief engineer. We still haven't got one of those on Discovery. Nobody knows who that
no
man
chief
or woman
engineer.
or
No
alien
chief
is.
engineer.
It's
Right,
like Stamets is quote unquote the chief mushroom guy, but he's not actually.
He's essentially the chief engineer.
Reno appears every now and again.
Yeah, Reno talks about the chief engineer in season 2. I mean, even a throwaway line saying the chief was killed, during the transit, and make Reno the chief engineer for Christ's sakes. It would solve a problem there. Before we do continue on, a couple of donations I've just missed. Danny Shields says a minute ago, Picard went from lieutenant to captain, a bigger leap than ensign to acting XO. Starfleet is not a military organization. Yeah, the story behind that does somewhat make sense because Picard was given command of a Stargazer, I believe, and assumed it when the captain was killed during a Ferengi attack, or what they didn't know at the time was a Ferengi attack. And I believe the actual first officer, which was Jack Crusher at the time, was it? Or was he below him? I can't remember. Because he died as well.
Hello.
I have to go back and look.
Oh no, because Jack Crusher died as well.
Yeah, he was dead. Yeah,
so I presume he took command and something like that. So there's more reasoning behind it, and I believe Starfleet gave him command of a ship because he was, he said, you might as well have it because, you are the serving crew member in a way. Amir says, I expected Stamets to say no. I also expected Stamets to turn around with some sarcastic remark, and he did with the eyes. He took a back, was like, didn't see that one coming. Picard was
Yeah.
an archaeologist. I think Picard was a Starfleet captain, but his background was in archaeology, or one of his backgrounds amongst.
And he had a
various-
passion.
I think he just
for
had a
it.
hobby. Yeah, I don't think
he
he
had
like,
a
had a
passion
degree.
for archaeology. I mean, the Kurlan Neskar gave him a little Jimmy in the pants. You know, he loved
Beg your pardon?
old rocks.
Mm.
Yeah.
I will also say one last note on the Tilly thing too that I wanted to
Mm.
quick mention was I think it's just that you kind of hit on this, Jack. Like I think it's just a problem with Discovery kind of wanting to have its cake and eat it too. Like because the main impetus for the show way back in season 1 was like, oh, we're not focusing on the bridge crew, we're focusing on like kind of the lower decks people, but they also still wanted to have this grand sweeping narrative of like this big space opera stuff that they had never been done before in Star Trek. So the story got bigger, even though their focus went smaller, like on the lower decks. So when you look at something like Lower Decks, the show, that works a little bit better because yeah, you are focusing on lower decks crew members like you were in Discovery, but the stories also kind of fit that setting. Like there were some big stuff that happened, but generally the stories are all kind of small scale. When you look at Discovery, it's like trying to have these big sweeping stories. And so now by the time we're at season 3, they've kind of gone back to a degree, that same old model of like, we're basically focusing on the bridge crew. And yes, we're like kind of more focused on the first officer character type with Burnham. Rather than the captain, but essentially we're focusing on the bridge crew. But now we've invested in all these other lower decks-ish type characters like Stamets and Tilly and everything. So it's like we want to stick with these characters, even though logically it would make no sense for them to be the focus of this type of narrative. And so it's like they're trying to juggle like focusing on the characters that we come to know and love, while also trying to have their grand sweeping soap opera. And it's just kind of an unfortunate mix that now they're stuck with like, we don't know Bryce. We don't know, all the other bridge crew characters all that well. And so we have to shove Tilly in this position because she's the character that we care about.
I agree with you there. Oh, sorry, after you.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say is right. So I'm arguing it from a narrative perspective. But if you also look at which narratively it's one issue, but then you also what's the real life? What's the real world issues here? And the issue is they have a lot of actors on set. They're paying out a lot of money for these actors, and they've just gotten Adira slotted into where Tilly was at before. Burnham, they're going to have slotted, maybe not in the. It makes me feel like now maybe she's not destined for the XO role, and she's going to be doing other things. So they had to write the story where she had it and then lost it, because if they didn't give it to her, then it would be weird. And so now they're probably were left with all the actors, and the character names on the table of saying, we can't hire on any more actors because we don't have enough money. Which one of these characters can be moved into this position? And then we could kind of allow that to flourish. And they probably did just pick Tilly. I think like you guys were saying, like, we'll have to see how it
Because it fits her arc
unfolds.
too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, and I said this for the episode from the other week, which is that episode Scavengers, I thought was kind of a weak episode. But ultimately, once the whole season's over with, it may feel much differently. This, again, may feel much different. Once we see how this thing unfolds at the end of the 13th episode, in my opinion, may change. We may see how it unfolds. But right now, where we are at this snapshot in time at the end of Unification 3, it makes no sense. We'll see how it plays out. But right, I mean, there was probably a real world issue with money and costs and actors and trying to figure out how can we do this? What's something that we can do to make this work? And yeah, I mean, there's a whole nother real world aspect to it, which is behind the curtain, essentially.
It just made me think in a way, as Jesse was explaining there, and what you just said, it's Discovery almost has too many characters right now in a way. Like we've got Book as well, whose whole thing for this episode was just staying on the ship. He was parked in the hangar bay. His character even makes a light reference to himself. He goes, "I live in the hangar bay of the ship." It's like he has nothing to do currently. He's just in the ship. He's waiting for Burnham to pop in. I was going to say a quickie then, but let's be honest, it's practically
he's literally the booty call that just lives on the ship.
He's just the old
it's
Mr.
him and his
Booker.
Fat cat,
Yeah,
that's about it. I mean, even grudging, like there's almost like too many people on there at the minute. And hopefully they find a reason to solve this. And I reckon towards the end of the season, I kind of hope it in a way that some characters do decide to integrate into the rest of Starfleet, because it would make sense. Starfleet is an organization that needs multiple people. Yes, Discovery crew are arguably out of date. However, they are retraining. So maybe at some point it's going to go, okay, right, Tilly, maybe you're going to go work on the USS Voyager or something like that. I doubt they'd get rid of Mary Wiseman or like transfer over. Maybe it's like, oh, Reese or something like that. One of the lesser known characters goes to work on like one of the new ships or goes to work with that. I'm using it as an example, but they try and maybe shift some people off.
Yeah.
In a way to basically allocate stuff there. It could make more sense. Oh, we lost one ship, therefore we need personnel to restore it. Something like that could work and could solve a lot of the problems. Thank you to everyone doing donations, by the way. I'm just going to catch up on some of them. And someone in the chat did just point out, yes, we have 200 views, only 40 likes. Can we get 100 likes? I hate asking for it, but it's a good goal. So even 50, go on. Press that button. We'll see if there's anything by the end of me reading these donations.
I'm hitting that dislike button right now.
Nick, get that exposed video ready. Anyway, Nathaniel,
I got it right here.
Nathaniel for $5 says, if it were compared to a Navy rank, rank is not enough to be CO or XO in a vessel. It requires training, which makes Tilly different. Yes, I totally agree with that, and we sort of covered that a minute ago. John Mendoza donates $10. Says, keep up the good work. Always look forward to new content. Thank you, John. As usual, if you are new around here, you can catch our weekly Trek Central reviews every Thursday for Star Trek Discovery, and of course these live streams every Sunday at 9 p.m. GMT. As we go into the new year, we've got some brand new content and a special announcement coming very soon, which, if you're lucky, you might get out of me in the coming month. So good luck. Danny Shields donates $5 again. Thank you, Danny. Says, would it have been sold if Sue had used his prerogative as captain to field promote Tilly to a commander? You know, here's a good question. I hate to come back on this, but it's a good topic. If Tilly was promoted to maybe lieutenant or something in this episode, do you reckon that would have, coupled with her promotion to acting XO, made a bit more sense? Do you reckon that would have legitimized it a bit more if she'd actually received a promotion? Because arguably some characters are overdue a promotion at this point in time, I'd say, given everything they've been through. Yeah. So maybe it would have made sense for them. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Anyone feel free to take that one away?
I think it would have been better, but it wouldn't solve the underlying situation of Tilly not being the most experienced person on the ship. So it would have made it a little better, but not solved it.
I will say too, like, it is weird to be like the promotion would have helped a little bit to like show, because I feel like in the episode it's kind of weird because she's like, oh, you're gonna get promoted, you're gonna be the first officer of the ship, and then she spends the whole episode kind of like publicly airing her grievances of like, I'm really nervous about this, which is not the thing that you want from your first officer, like publicly going, or like all your crew is like, oh, our first officer's a really nervous Nelly. Which I get, which like I get as part, which I get is part of like Tilly's character. It totally makes sense for her, and it's what she would do, but it's also kind of like a weird thing. So it would have been nice to have like a little piece of like, here's this like underlying confidence support thing, or like something to like show confidence to like public facing crew that she deserves this. I guess I guess I'm thinking of like Tilly's PR management.
You've got a great way of putting it there, to be honest. As you say, Nick.
Yeah, I would say her getting promoted would alleviate some of the issues, but the experience piece is still an issue. Yeah. I would have argued that she should have been if he was like wanting to get her in that position or get her closer to the captain's chair, a promotion and then designating her as the second officer would have made more sense. But I know that they already have a second officer.
Well, do they?
But yeah, I feel like that would have made a bit more sense. Like, because the way, in my mind, the way it would kind of work is if your captain's gone, then your first officer goes to that level, to the captain level, and then the second officer goes to the first officer, and that's how the chain kind of flows.
Because, you know,
we see that in the Next Generation.
What was the Next Gen episode again? I really like it. It's the one where Data takes command, because Picard gets kidnapped or goes undercover. Riker gets kidnapped, quote unquote. It's the one where we're doing the archaeology stuff, and then Data takes command because he's second officer. I mean, we see actually a longer version of that when they do the Borg one, which was the Borg one called? Was it Redemption?
The one where they were trying to stop Sela from moving supplies from Romulan territory into the
in the Borg where they stop Law again. He's taking over the Borg, and Dr. Crusher.
The Descent.
The Descent.
Oh,
Descent.
right.
You remember? Because they go through every officer. Like Picard goes down to search for Data, then Riker goes down, then Worf, then Troy, then like Crusher's left in charge. It's like she's the only senior officer, and it's only the chief medical officer. They do actually have the ability to outrank the captain only in medical matters, but Dr. Beverly Crusher, on any chief medical officer, she holds the rank of commander, but would only ever take the role, ever take command in the event, that all the other senior officers are incapacitated, etc. So that was a good role there. But it does remind me of that episode of Next Gen where Choi is in charge of a bridge instead of like Lieutenant Rowe, which is an interesting one.
Yeah. What I just realized what they should have done is they should have promoted her and made her second officer, but left the first officer role vacant. Yeah. Like saying, because Burnham's been put, we left it vacant. And then, so basically she is de facto first officer, but not necessarily in name. That probably would have helped.
Or just made her a permanent member of the senior staff. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of, maybe you guys can remember this. From what I gather, she's not really a permanent member of senior staff, but maybe promoting her and putting her on that group would have been better. And then we could have had scenes where Saru is working with the entirety of the senior staff to kind of do things on the Discovery while he's still attempting to figure out which one of those people he should make his first officer instead of like trying to.
You are correct there. Again, it brings back to this point that Discovery has bloody way too many people in a way. And I feel like this may be a personal criticism in a way, because it does feel like there's who are the senior staff? There's like too many people running around on this ship. Like, obviously, yes, it's different, but in like, I compare it to Enterprise. We clearly knew who the senior staff was: Archer, T'Pol, Trip, Reed, Mayweather, and Hoshi. Yeah, those are Fox, obviously. I mean, Fox
if we
wasn't
had
considered senior staff.
26 episodes, we would get that. But we only have 13. That's the main crux of
I guess we could make a discussion and an argument that although 13 episodes, does allow these much more higher quality episodes, does it in fact lose the the lore and more of the substance which many Trekkies crave? I guess I mean, it could be a really good discussion here. Nick, I expect to maybe see this video on your channel sometime soon, or even Jesse. This could be a great discussion.
Well, I mean, it is a good discussion, because it's like, we don't know who the chief engineer is. We don't know who the chief medical officer is. We don't really know officially who the second officer is, kind of. And right, like, my assumption is the senior staff are the people that Saru invited to his dinner party that ended in a disaster. Yes. But was that the senior staff? Or is that just the people he works closely with? Again, it's not really. It's not really
time
stated
to actually explore these what are arguably important things to us, but they're not important to the plot overall. Or technically, they may be, given we're having this discussion anyway. I feel like that's something we lose here, because in compared to Enterprise again, we had time to explore these interpersonal things. There was a whole episode where Archer goes around trying to get Reed a bloody birthday cake, for Christ's sakes. We don't really have time to do that in Discovery right now, because there's not a time to fit it in. We bring us back to season 2 where Arian was killed off, yet she got an episode dedicated to her. Are we going to see something like that again if they need to kill off another character in a way? It's like they don't have time to build these characters up so we can feel for them. How are you meant to feel for Arian? I mean, even Narn, in a way, you didn't really get to feel. But they did almost the same thing they did for Ariam in a way, where Narn had a lot of her backstory explained, but not in the same way. It wasn't like an information overload. It was a subtle way of doing it this time before she exited. And she didn't die, so it wasn't really like an emotional, like, oh shit, didn't see that coming.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a criticism in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the ways that television in general has kind of shifted. In the sense that, like, shows like this, like what Discovery is trying to do is they're basically trying to be 13-hour movies. They're basically telling one story kind of broken up into like little chapters, but it's all essentially one story and going forward. And so because of that, when you have a story structured that way, it means that every piece of that story has to kind of be pushing that narrative forward. So like the dinner scene, while that is a small interpersonal scene, it's speaking to the larger PTSD of the whole crew. It's like it's always driving at the driving thrust of the narrative of the season, because it's trying to fit that sort of movie mold. Whereas in something like Next Gen or any of the other Star Trek shows prior to this, you didn't necessarily always have to have that forward thrust of the story. So you could have the, like, I don't know, Data is learning the saxophone this week or whatever, because right. Yeah, exactly. So because that side story with Data would have nothing to do with whatever the A plot of the episode was, and it didn't need to, and that was okay. So you could have these character explorations. And so I think it's part of, like, yes, there's less time because there's 13 episodes, but I also think it's an element of, like, the desire to have every single piece fit into the larger narrative whole.
We see a similar thing with Starship Picard in a way, where because they're trying to fit everything together, they evidently miss certain things. One being what the hell happened to Narek at the end of Picard. That's not explained because it was cut due to time, etc. And it didn't really work. Argument, did it add to the narrative, etc.? I mean, yes, it did, because we kind of needed a conclusion to his story, of which now I think is probably going to be a throwaway line in season 2. Oh, he's hanged up in Federation prison because he did a lot of bad stuff. But I just feel like it's a bit of a. I mean, if anyone has any thoughts on that, feel free to say. If not,
I mean,
we've got another topic to discuss.
Shaban mentioned, like, when he was Michael Shaban, the executive producer of Star Trek Picard. For those of you who don't know, I know all of you know, but people in the chat.
Did you take us for Jesse?
But anyways, he talked about, like, one of the things that he had to kill a lot of the times in the editing room, or even before they filmed, was the stuff on the Borg cube. And it just feels like, and the reason, and it left the Borg cube feeling like very much like kind of annoying and dull because there was nothing that we cared about on there, when clearly there was a lot going on there that you could have shown of like what were the Romulans really doing and all that stuff. And I'm sure that was written and thought about and maybe even filmed, but had to be cut because again, it did not fit into that narrative thrust. It was like, well, this is ancillary, it's not telling the main story we're doing, so we're going to cut it. And again, it just all goes to the mindset of like, yeah, but that's sort of the stuff that makes us care about the world. And you're cutting it because it doesn't fit. It doesn't always push the narrative forward, but sometimes you need to have stuff that's ancillary.
Like sometimes, if they cut that stuff there, it cuts off potential future stuff as well. I'm going to make a comparison to The Mandalorian here, minus spoilers if you've not seen the latest episode. That there is arguably building up ancillary media and doing it when this week it mentioned a character of Grand Admiral Thrawn, which obviously me and Dom are very big fans of. That there, you could have cut that scene and it wouldn't have made any difference to the overall plot of the show, but it's put in that scene to make people go, yes, that makes them get talking, makes them thinking. I feel like Discovery and Star Trek as a whole, the modern iteration certainly, maybe missing that side of things there. Those subtle mentions, they aid story, and particularly fans and people like us, etc., also fans obviously, where we can go away and go, actually, that's really good there, and suddenly that spawns books off or different shows, media, movies, etc. Discovery may be missing that in a way, and not just Discovery, Star Trek as well.
I think I have a slightly different opinion on that, and I'll shut up about it after that because I probably should move on from this topic. But I guess
no, it's a good discussion.
Yeah, the thing with Mandalorian that I don't like as much, and again, I don't want to go too off on that, is like that's like referencing stuff that's like that, even that like the Thrawn might come back to that story, but it's still like kind of like something else out there that doesn't really have to do with what's happening at the moment. The thing that I like that's in the Mandalorian that I wish we got a little bit more of in Discovery was I like the smaller moments where you have like the Baby Yoda like trying to fit together the wires with Mando on the ship, because that speaks like that's like it shows that they have lives outside of the story that we're telling, that they have other things that they're doing. I want an episode where Tilly spends the week learning to play saxophone, because then it's like, I feel like they have lives that live outside of the trying to figure out what the burn is. Like I'm interested in the burn. I just want to see what their interior lives are.
It's a double-edged sword, right? Because they try to make these seasons so thin, so tight, so lean, and they try to do a laser focus on the overarching plot of the storyline and the way that they're telling these seasons, is if they have an episode where they do that, where they have a Tilly go and learn the saxophone or whatever, it becomes frustrating because it's like you're only giving me 13 episodes and you're telling me that this is a very important plot to get through, but now you're wasting an episode on Tilly learning the saxophone. So it's like a double-edged sword. So they back themselves into this weird corner where they're trying to now fit in these character beats. And I would say for the most part, they're doing the best that they can in this season in particular, adding into character beats. Yeah. But obviously nothing in comparison to what we've had in previous iterations of Trek. They're trying their best to try to incorporate the character moments and still focus in on the plot of what's going on. And I appreciate the effort. It is noted, and it is obvious that that's what they're trying to do, and I appreciate it. But it is a very fine line in between filler episode and trying to progress the plot. Like that's a very fine line with trying to figure that out. And
it's a hard line to
they're
walk.
doing the best they can.
John, thank you for your $20 donation. John says, Tilly's promotion was so discordant with my experience as a Navy service member. It was really hard to swallow, but it made it easy accept that Michael's mom turned out to be her quote-unquote advocate. Let's discuss that. That's something I wanted to move on to, actually. Thank you, John.
Let's move on. We're moving on.
And how you guys feel about this? Now, I was going to say Tilly's mom. Michael's mom turning up as her quote-unquote advocate. That's a mouthful. I wasn't particularly keen on that, although it made sense and worked with the episode. Part of me is like, that's an easy way to tie off what the hell happened to her then, isn't it? Fancy that. She landed on a planet and suddenly became part of a Vulcan or, Romulan nun group. But I guess, it does sort of make sense. But at the same time, I was like, that's convenient. That's a bit suspicious. But how do you guys feel about that? Dom, maybe you could start off.
I was completely fine with it because I was not interested at all in the where's Michael's mum plot, because I was like, I'm more interested.
No.
In
who cares? That was me. I don't care.
Yeah. So I'm fine with it. It is a little like, that's convenient, but it serviced the plot really well for what Michael's mum was to do in that episode. How she was the advocate and pushed Michael to be honest with herself, and we got that deep dive into Michael's character. So for me, it is convenient, but it's good kind of convenient.
Of course, and I really appreciate the moment where, you know, she almost broke down Burnham in a way. I didn't see it coming when she flipped on. It was like, what, you betrayed your captain, got her killed, and then you've also buggered up your last job in the next 5 minutes. It's like, ooh, that's like a typical conversation with your mum when you've really gone and F something up, isn't it? It's like, well, here's all the things you did wrong in the last 5 minutes, and this is why you're a bad person.
In public.
Yeah, it's like embarrassing you in public. It's like, ooh, I could feel that one through the screen in a way.
Yeah.
Jesse, Nick, what did you think? Whoever wants to go first.
I liked it. I thought it was great. I wish that they had spent another 2 or 3 lines on how she got there or why she arrived there and decided to join the Coat Mallant. I think it was just a little too fast in the hallway for their walk and talk conversation. But I thought it was good. I wish that they had kind of zeroed in on the idea, because I kind of had to fill it in a little bit of my head canon a little bit, because it's like she's arrived in the future, one that they actually did save, so she knows that they were successful, which she has tried over 800 times or whatever to do that, I think it was. So what was she going to do?
She was really bad at her job.
She sucked. I mean, she needed Michael Burnham. That's the thing. But and it's like, okay, in my head canon, I kind of was like, all right, so she went to Vulcan, Navarre, to maybe connect a little bit with the culture that raised her daughter and try to be involved with that process. And then she just kind of identified with the very analytical, very cold and hardcore approach of the Coat Mallant. And I wish they'd spent just a few more lines on that. So I'm filling that in my head of like, she was doing that for Michael. And I liked it. I thought it was great. I mean, it is a bit of a convenience, sure, but I mean, the thing is her character is so inconsequential, and I don't mean that negatively. It's just they haven't given her enough to really do. Like, after they did the whole sequence with her in season 2, her arc really kind of ended. So they could either make her very, very important again, or they could just put her in somewhere where, for a character moment, it made sense. And to me, it didn't bother me all that much. It was like, whatever, she's there. It's not a big deal. I honestly didn't expect it to be her when they beamed up her advocate.
Yeah, I didn't.
I was thinking maybe like a long lost relative.
Yeah, like Spock's kid somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, okay.
Cyborg. Who could have guessed?
Cyborg. That would have been funny. Yeah,
Cyborg is you.
Yeah,
that was sort of the whole
Cyborg's
season
here.
2 thing of like, but how come we didn't know Spock had a brother? You know, what the hell? You know,
That always bothers me that we get no mention of Cyborg whatsoever.
It's just like the uncle you don't mention, to be honest, the family member no one
Yeah.
talks about, you know, because they don't like him.
Yeah.
Enzo Vicky, thank you for $5 donation. Hyde's biggest problem is that they are good at starting things, which puts you on board. They're bad at endings, like a sucker punch. I mean, yeah, that could be a discussion. I mean, again, the Lower Decks ending was quite nice, so, you know, it's catch-22, and I think that's the whole thing to talk about there. Someone brought up an interesting thing, which I want to talk about in a minute. Cecile says, I wish Giorgio had appeared this week and had a conversation grilling with Dr. Burnham. That would have been interesting if like that was there. Now, what caught my eye about this? I've seen now. So we got the press pictures for this week's episode, and it showed 3 images, I believe, of Doctor Hugh Culber and Giorgio having a somewhat conversation with each other about Giorgio's current condition. Now, this popped up again when I think the official Star Trek account, and I hope they've not deleted that tweet now.
Yeah, it was behind the scenes pictures.
Yeah, they behind the scenes did it. Now that scene didn't appear this week, so I was like, what? Now, was it filmed? Because I believe Kirsten Beer was in that picture, wasn't she? So therefore,
she was. So, yeah, she was in the picture with
like
Michelle Yeoh.
It seems like it was filmed for this episode,
but was cut.
But
I think they pushed it
into the next episode.
Because they showed it in the Ready Room, like scenes from next episode, and that was in if you watch the Ready Room, they showed scenes from the next episode, and it was that scene. So it seems like they must have pushed it.
To be honest with you, like obviously we'll have to discuss this next week when we watch episode 8, isn't it? Which is Sanctuary. Is that the next episode?
Yes.
Sanctuary, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, Sanctuary.
I've literally not watched the Ready Room clip. I've been really out of date this week. So yeah, we that's obviously been pushed to next week, which might make interesting sense. If anything, Giorgio wouldn't have had much to do in this episode apart from maybe argue with the mother, Gabriella, and also just berate Culber. I feel like that, I can probably provide more to that, but I just want to bring it up anyway, as it's interesting with the official account tweet that one out. I have a feeling we weren't meant to do that. Maybe that was maybe meant to be a scheduled tweet for next week instead.
Yeah, either that, or like edits changed last minute too.
Yeah,
so
potentially.
I mean, they probably looked at this episode and whatever it is that they're talking about, because the central theme of this episode was really about Michael Burnham's journey. And yes, it was attached to the plot of the SB-14 or whatever it is, SB-19 sensors. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of there. But really, the focus of this was Spock, Romulans, Vulcan unification, and Michael Burnham dealing with the realities of her two different lifestyles, kind of figuring out how to merge them into one and kind of reconcile those into a new person. And so whatever that sequence is, or maybe that other B or C plot that they were going to add, perhaps they felt like it was bloating it, which honestly, I'm glad that I don't know what it is yet. I feel good about this episode. I mean, I felt like there was a significant amount of time dedicated to what was going on with the Romulans and the Vulcans and Michael Burnham that I didn't feel like it was a watered down episode at all. I felt like there was a sufficient amount of information being passed back and forth, and I liked all the interactions between the Romulan Vulcan characters. And honestly, like I said, I actually wished for more. I actually wish there was more of that.
Like Dom said at the start, we've got a lot of information to process this episode. There's more substance to be had here. Like, we need to revisit Navarre, and as Perry just donated $5, and they said Sister Mama Burnham gives an excuse to revisit Navarre, which is completely true. It does give us a reason to go back, a more legit reason than popping back just for some tea. There's a reason for Burnham to go there. Perhaps later on in the season she needs more counsel or more advice. She can go back there. There's more legit reason to go back to Navarre. It's not just them popping off for a picnic, There's a legit reason to go back this time. So maybe, we'll get more of that. But I completely agree with you, Nick. We've got a lot to process and a lot to explore with this episode. So, yeah. I don't know, Jesse, how do you feel about that? Do you reckon we could revisit Navarre at some point?
I think so. I think it's really it all goes back to that same problem that I was talking about before. Is like, is there going to be a plot reason to go back? Because if there's not a plot reason, I don't know if we will. And there might be a plot reason to go back there, but I don't immediately see it. I feel like if we do go back, it's going to be something somewhat similar to what they did at the end of season 2, which is kind of like the Avengers Assemble moment that they had at the end of season 2. So I feel like either in the finale or maybe the episode right before the finale, it'll be like, all right, well, we figured out the burn, and we need to stop back at every single spot that we've been throughout the entire season, and use all the relationships that we've now forged in this century in order to fight back against the burn. So, or whatever the main thrust of it is that at that point. So, yeah.
Is it me, or is modern sci-fi love doing what we can now con as the Avengers moment? Mandalorian did it in season 1. It's like, let's get Grief Karga, IG-11, all these people and Quill together to go fight something. Season 2 did it. It's like, let's get, the Enterprise and all those people together. I would happily laugh if Discovery season 3 goes, right, let's get Commander Nhan, we'll get Admiral back, we'll get Mama Berman back as well. And look, we've got Cyborg. Well, hey, the Voyager J is chucked in there. Fucking the USS Ketwolski.
I swear to you that my bet is in the finale, it's going to either be the Voyager J shows up at the last moment and saves them at some point, or it's whatever the Enterprise of this era is.
Yes, we need an Enterprise. Oh, I'm going to start shilling for that now, to be honest.
Well,
no, Nick, don't ruin this fun for me.
I would say, like, I don't think it needs to be. I think what they should do is a narrative version of the Avengers Assemble. I think in season 2 they had the combative Avengers Assemble. I think this one should be whatever being or entity, because I still believe in that theory, that caused the burn initially. It should be a new grouping of Federation members, including Earth, the Jupiter colonies, Navarre, all the other people that they contact. They should all be representatives sitting down to do first contact with whatever entity. Moment. And it should be right. Maybe we'll do it on the Enterprise. Maybe we'll do it on the flagship of the Federation fleet or whatever. Probably not.
It's gonna be in Discos. It's gonna be in the Disco.
Discovery. It's gonna
be they're the same place they had the council
torches,
thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the mess hall for sure. There's gonna be a gong and everything. Yeah, that's what I hope. I hope it's like a narrative assembly at the end, because it's already like they're already building on that. Like,
yeah.
Saru and the Discovery are already starting to grease the wheels with a few of those locations already.
Alone.
Right, exactly. So they're already starting to build that up, and I feel like it should be like this narrative conclusion where they're all back together again. and they're back, and like we should have this really cool shot at Starfleet headquarters where these representatives sit down and everybody's there, and then they're like, all right, now what do we do? And then they go into season 4.
That's
what I
points
would
on
like.
your topic.
I feel
that very much reminds me of the Enterprise. Archer gets together with representatives to form the coalition of planets, and he goes, we're brought here, let's explore it together. Secondly, I'm almost forgetting now, I must really comment, and we've kind of like glossed over this, we've been focusing on Tilly and everything else. Saru's like own little story this episode alone, very well done there. I feel like Saru's really coming forward and being extremely confident in his captain role. His discussions with the Vulcan president, whose name I forget off the top of my head, Tarina, very well done. I loved it, and when she goes, I wish we could continue these discussions, he does the live long and prosper there. Really love that moment there.
Though he doesn't say peace and long life.
He doesn't, no.
But he doesn't know that, though. He did his best.
Come on, dog.
He
just did a microaggression against.
Whatever with Michael.
He should have said. He should have done it and just been like, "Back at you."
It's cool.
Live long and prosper, asshole.
I will say,
salute.
He should have done the handshake. He should have done the Zephram Cochrane where he couldn't do and then went in for the handshake.
What do Kelpians do? Maybe they don't do handshakes. They just like shoot their back.
What they do is not rated PG-13.
He should have done the Mirror Universe one. Just got a shotgun out and blast her away.
That's right. Yeah, use little tendril spike things to shoot her.
This eliminates the president.
That's right.
I will say the bit with Saru that I loved the most this episode was I adored the moment where the Vulcan president, she says, this was just the straw that broke the camel's back essentially, and there's so much more that was going on besides just these satellite things and this research project. And Saru's response to that is I would love to hear about it. It's not like it was basically just saying subtly, and it was just wonderfully written. It's like, well, I'm not here to just get what I want out of you and go. It was me saying, I'm here to listen, and I want to forge a relationship back with Vulcan and with you. And I'm not just here to come and use you and disappear again.
A hint of a romantic interest between the two. I'm just throwing that out there.
You've just read that comment, haven't you? You've read that when they're shipping him there. I read that.
Well.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
You're not the only one. There's a bunch of people that were feeling that.
She was like, I want to continue these conversations with, I want to party with you.
Maybe over a glass of wine in my Vulcan apartment.
Come back in 7 years and we might have some fun.
Oh, God.
Yeah, he's gonna show her his ceremonial knife, if you know what I mean.
Imagine that. 7 years. Christ. That would be boring, wouldn't it? Anyway, a couple of donations before we lose ourselves on that topic, like we did at the start of the stream. Sean Casey, $5. You should get Anti-Checker on. His thoughts on Discovery are firm but fair. Maybe we'll do the expanse of slim number of episodes and seems more satisfying. A quick comment to avoid us going down that session again. I will say the expanse is arguably a smaller universe and therefore more contained. Discovery, being in the 32nd century, has a hell of a big Star Trek universe to play with. Therefore, containing that in 10 episodes is a lot, or 13 episodes in this case, is a lot harder than the expanse, which is technically at the moment limited to one solar system. Spoilers.
Well, yeah, I should. Yeah, spoilers. Never mind.
I said spoilers.
What are you doing?
Some of us have read the book. Amir for $5 says,
read the books now.
You would think by the 32nd century they would easily replicate in mycelium tech as well duplicating the genetic influence stamets. Honestly, I expect them to do that at some point. Let's have a quick discussion
but
about
not
this.
the genetic influence tech.
No, so like mycelium travel, and obviously Dadmore mentions that as well in the previous episode, wasn't it? Where he's like, Discovery has this advanced thing. With this all proto-matter, I keep wanting to call it proto-molecule now. This proto-matter thing, a programmable matter, I don't know why I call it that. They could really replicate the spore drive in a way. Do we see them trying to do something like that at the end of it? Because the way Admiral Vance strikes me at a minute, he seems like a bit of an opportunist. I mean, we see it in this episode where he's like, yes, we can use Michael Burnham to go and get on Navarre's good books because she's the sister of Spock. That opportunism is there, and you don't blame him for it, really. I'm surprised by now if he isn't already looking at trying to replicate Discovery's spore drive tech in some way. And it really wouldn't surprise me. Could we see that in this season, ladies and gentlemen? What do we think?
I think that they should have. I actually don't think him. I don't view him as an opportunist. I view him as somebody who has spent his entire adult life trying to keep his head above water.
Okay, so, probably a better way to put it. Yeah, you see what I meant, though.
Well, no, and I say like he used the opportunity of Michael Burnham there because he's just trying to think of a way to try to put out this fire that's been burning for a while. Because he's literally is just constantly dealing with these constant struggles, which is why I would argue that the idea of putting the Discovery on ice and ripping the spore drive out of there so that they could retrofit it for all of their starships hasn't really occurred to him because he's so concerned about not damaging any asset that he has that he doesn't think long term. He's constantly thinking short term goals all the time, which is why I think he's struggling to get out of his own way, which I think that that's going to be his arc later on.
We see that a bit where Burnham hints to, or even Saru in his speech about his Renaissance era. It was like, his light at the end of the tunnel. That almost like Discovery could show him there is like a different path, to take in a way. And sorry, Jesse, did you want to say something?
Right. Oh no! Mine's slightly off. It's on this topic, but it's slightly off topic because it has to do with a wild theory that I have.
No, take.
But it is about Starfleet. Well, I just have a wild theory that, to be fair, is based not on much, but there are some elements of it that I think might play into it. Is I do wonder if maybe we might see another version of Starfleet out there too. Ooh. And that there's something off with this version of Starfleet, that there's another sect of Starfleet out there. The reason I get that opinion is based on two things. One, when Georgiou asked David Cronenberg that one question, she asked, who's really in charge? And David Cronenberg just totally sidestepped that question and did not answer it. So that we're clearly meant to ask that question and are being sort of not being told it. So I do wonder if there are some potentially, I don't even know if it's nefarious might be the right words, but their goals might be not as aligned as they might think with this version of Starfleet. And the second reason that I base that off of is purely just a me thing, but I hate the new uniforms. I hate the gray. They read a bit evil to me. Gray uniforms always read evil to me. And so I'm oh, is that a subtle hint? But that's totally a me production designy person kind of thing.
I love the grays.
Oh, see, I hate them. I hate it. I
don't agree with you on the uniforms, but I agree with you on the theory. I personally have always been a part of this Vidraish thing. We've heard mentioned before. Now we know that is a synagogue. Is it synagogue or synagogue? How do you pronounce
Synagogue.
Synagogue, not a synagogue. Okay, easy.
Of the Federation, which is confirmed by Margaret Schaefer. That's gonna be a new one.
Yeah, that's right. It's a synagogue. That's right.
The synagogue of the Federation.
Some weird shit going on over there. Anyway, yeah. So basically, we've got the Vidraish presumably out there, or we know by the time of Calypso, which is also up in the air discussion-wise at the minute, they will be at a war with who's the guy called again? Craft. That's the one, yeah.
Craft and the people of Alcor 4.
Yeah, so they'll be at some war with them. So that's obviously that could be retconned at a later date because short treks do. I feel like short treks do have a weird place in canon where they can be adapted if need be. That's kind of what we're seeing already.
Did they say they were at war with each other, or did he say it was an enemy?
They've been at war for 10 years.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So anyway, we've already got the Vidraish out there, and we know back in episode 2 they were mentioned. So the Vidraish are out there at some point. Now, I personally view the Vidraish as a former section of the Federation, not Section 31, of the Federation. That's why, their name is a warped version or a syncope of the term Federation. That could be another group of Starfleet who thought, sticking together and putting out fires, every man for himself, or every alien for himself in this case. They've gone to do that. But honestly, I reckon we might see different variations of Starfleet. This Starfleet, even they say it in this episode, the Vulcan presence, the Federation got so large, that's where the burn or the dilithium crisis started from, in a way. They got so large, well, it makes sense that other groups that have broken off, some will go back to their native planets, like Earth did, where it's the Earth Defense Force, but others, they may stay in a local system in a way. There may be a local system for local people, for anyone who gets that joke. So, there could be a segment for that. There we go. I don't know, but it's definitely a lot to think about. Nick, what do you think about that? Because I know you've discussed the Vidraish in great detail and things like that, but what do you think?
I would say that there is a strong possibility that the Vidraish and the Federation are two different groups.
The Vidraish?
Yes. I think that there's a very strong possibility that those are two different groups of people, both with the idea. I mean, we had already theorized prior to the season starting that now we know them as the Earth Defense Force was an offshoot of the Federation, and that the gray uniforms and the blue uniforms were two different groups, and one was going to be Federation, one was going to be Vidraish, and we obviously figured that out, that that's not the case. But I think that there's still a possibility, which would lean into what we've been told all season, which is that every time somebody says, oh, all I've ever heard about the Federation is this one horrible thing, this other horrible thing, this other negative thing about them. They've been saying it several times throughout the season, and it's possible that they're referencing a different group that's calling themselves or representing themselves as the Federation, when the Federation is actually Dadmiral and his group over there, and it's actually two different groups. Because right, if it's encompassing all 4 quadrants, that's a massive amount of space, and the idea that no other pockets survived is already not true, because we already know that just from the first episode with old boy on the station, he could detect 2 or 3 other starships in that area.
Yeah.
So there's reason to believe that other star bases would have survived and other starships would have survived, and maybe they're kind of doing their own thing and causing a bit of havoc without necessarily realizing. Right, in their own warped way,
a perverted way,
in a perverted kind of
that.
perspective. Yeah.
It'll be interesting how that gets brought up and how that's explored. And I hope it is explored. We've had a discussion before. It may not get explored in this season. It could potentially be explored somewhere else. We've got a hell of a big sandbox to play with right now. It doesn't need to be explored in season 3. The Vidrash could be roughly mentioned. They could pop up in season 4 as a villain or like an adversary, etc. I'd be perfectly happy with that. Discovery has got a hell of a lot of time left in it anyway. We already know season 4 is somewhere, and also season 5 is pre-planning, etc. I really wouldn't be surprised if more seasons do pop up, or there's plenty of time to play with the future of Discovery's canon in a way, and I think that's great personally.
Yeah, I just had the idea. What if the Vidrash were like a Equinox kind of situation in Voyager, where it was a part of the Federation that was stranded, and they had to rely on more unethical ways to survive, and that warped them. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
there's
precedent for it. Yeah, there's precedence for that. Yeah.
I'm sure someone's gonna be like, "You don't understand what we had to do to survive." Someone says,
"They've abandoned us."
Says, do you think Discovery would benefit from removing music from dialogue scenes? Sometimes it feels like the music is pushing the scenes and not allowing them to breathe. I mean, I'll get everyone's opinions on this in a second. Personally, for myself, I think music helps certain scenes. To have complete silence or only the ambience is strong. We see that in older things. They don't always have music every 5 minutes, whereas Discovery right now does have a level of music all the time. But what do you guys think about that? Music in certain scenes, do you think it should be removed? I don't see it as an issue myself, but
it may sound like a what's the word, hypocritical coming from me, considering all my videos have music. But I actually I always hate. I'm always an advocate for less music in TV shows and movies. I always think that they sometimes it can be a perfect balance, but generally I find that most TV shows and movies overplay the music because music is there to help get you to a feeling. It shouldn't necessarily it's not there to dictate a feeling to you. It's to help you get to the feeling. So if you have to put in music and it's not getting you there, if the actual scene's not getting you there and the music's just kind of pushing you, it should be icing on the cake. That's I guess the way I should put it. As opposed to the thing that pushes you to get there, which I don't think is always true in most cases. Though I will give Jeff Rousseau a props, because I think he does a wonderful job. Almost every single composition he does is really beautiful. So I'm always an advocate for less music in general in things. So,
and especially Jeff Russo's job this season, considering they had to string all the music together from the individual musicians.
Most definitely.
Just like, you don't hear that. And for me personally, I love a lot of it's become more apparent in this season, the music in the scenes, and for me that's a good thing. I think it really complements the scenes and adds to them, but I can definitely see someone being like, that's driving the emotion instead of the scene, but for me it complements them.
I don't even notice it. Maybe that makes me sound an uncultured swine. I don't notice it. I really don't. I think I'm just kind of focused on what's going on, that I kind of tune the music out. And I'm sorry, Jeff, if you hear that. I love you. I think you do great work, but I'm not noticing it. Sorry.
For me,
I think
enhances scenes.
Sorry.
Yeah, for me, it enhances scenes, and like particularly certain scenes need it. Other scenes, like a bit like Nick, but I don't notice it because I'm focused on the content of the time. Which for me, it just enhances the experience. There's certain things we always remember, certain bits of music as they play it, etc. Enhance it. Like a lot of space scenes are typically enhanced by music. Sometimes when Discovery's about to jump, or when it arrives at Federation HQ in episode 5, etc. The music there definitely enhanced. If it was silent, I personally feel that scene's a bit boring. However, with music, it enhances it. So I don't see Discovery's music as a current issue. So yeah, that's my first
I will say, and I, to kind of put an addendum on my thoughts, like I generally do think that things need less music in as a whole. I will say that Jeff Rousseau's done a great job of like connecting different themes throughout things. Like I adored both in Picard when he like connected the Romulan theme in there, or when he tossed in like the Voyager theme in when Seven of Nine shows up. Just sort of like nice little like thematic tying together of things, and he's done that here in Discovery quite well. As when you see like different moments where he's like tying in like the Federation like TNG theme at certain points to sort of remind you, just like we're back with the Federation. So he's definitely done a great job of like music is a great connector. I mean, as we're kind of already seeing with the other hints of the burn, is sort of like another sort of thematic use of that in the story itself.
Agreed.
Of course. Thank you to everyone for your donations for this evening, by the way. And also, we've got 97 likes now. You guys have been mental this evening. Danny, once again, says, this will probably come up too late, but I'm basing this on how surprised I was rewatching DS9 and seeing how many scenes were void of music. That's totally, makes sense. A lot of the older Star Trek didn't have music scenes. When I mentioned that comment originally, I immediately thought of how many scenes on the Enterprise D on the bridge where there were no music at all. And you didn't get much music then. You only got it in certain scenes, whereas now modern sci-fi, modern media in general, there is music in nearly every scene to accompany it and enhance it in a way. And this obviously builds into Jesse's comment about we need less of it, or certain people perceive we need less of it in modern.
I will say if you listen to early Next Gen, there's like first 2 seasons of Next Gen is like music, wall to wall music, and it drives me nuts. And I'm always just like, oh my god, stop! I can see not have music.
Now I want to go back and rewatch these episodes of Discovery to see if I notice the music now, because like I'm not paying attention. But now I want to see.
Yeah, go back and rewatch Next Gen seasons 1 and 2, and then watch like seasons 3 and 4, and you'll notice completely different takes on how music is used. And it drives me crazy early Next Gen.
Okay. Stream. Let's discuss the next episode of what we think is going to happen. Okay. So next episode is called Sanctuary. It's episode 8. Jesse, I'm going to go to yourself first. Who's seen the Ready Room? I've not seen the Ready Room clip, but you've obviously seen the trailer and Ready Room clip. What do you think is going to happen, or where do you think this episode is taking us? Give us any of your wildest theories you have.
I mean, my wildest theories, what I'm really hoping, and from what I kind of saw with the trailer, less so with the scene from Ready Room, more for the trailers. Like finally, we're gonna get an actual tangible piece of what's going on with the burn. It looks like there's something clearly. There was that weird, like, I don't know what that was, the square weird thing that happened with Giorgio's face in that one. Did anyone remember that, or someone's face?
Like
someone's George's like had that weird distortion. Yeah,
there was something going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am hopeful that this episode will finally put the burn story into high gear. I've talked about in my own reviews of, while I find the burn interesting, I haven't really found it all that compelling, because I'm just sort of like, yeah, it is something that they need to figure out in order to heal and everything, but I don't get like the rush of like, oh my god, we need to figure this out right now. I mean, it's 100-year-old mystery. So it's like, yes, we need to figure it out, but it's like, why do we need to solve it tomorrow? And so the like narrative, like I need to get this done right now, it hasn't really been working for me. It's like trying to figure out like what like, clearly this is going to be a touchy metaphor, but like clearly like the Civil War has issues today in American history, without touching on exactly what, but like clearly that has had influences on politics today, but it's also not a problem that I'm like, we need to solve tomorrow. It's like, it's a thing that like can be extrapolated out. So that's why I'm hoping the burn story gets to be something that we can finally feel like there's an actual narrative, like we need to solve this now. There's like a little bit of a ticking clock to make it a little bit more compelling. The Civil War was probably not the best metaphor. I think I just made everyone quiet.
No, you're fine. It's okay. So I would say my concern for next week is actually that it's going to be another giant filler episode. I have one of the, because like we talked about this a couple of times, which is we're essentially at the end of all the current footage that's available in the season trailers that they've given out. I think we're pretty much wrapped up here. There's only a few additional shots. One in particular is of Burnham and Book running through a forest. It looks like being shot or chased by drones or something. But ultimately, I don't know what else to expect for the rest of the season. And now that we're literally like we've gone now over the halfway marker, we really need to kick this season into high gear and start hitting these, hitting the burn, hitting the problems, getting these things resolved, and really kicking this season up a notch. I appreciated the slow build, but now we need to build. Like, we need to keep going. My concern with this episode is that we're going to kind of do a filler, and this is like what we talked about, like I said earlier, which is that double-edged sword of we're going to spend time dealing with Giorgio's situation, probably with her conversation with Culber that got cut from this, Unification 3, probably is going to do with something going on with her. Like, it's going to be something to do with our other characters. And I actually concerned. I know, Jess, you're excited to see it, that they're going to put something in high gear with the burn. I'm concerned that it's not going to be put into high gear at all. And it's going to be another background thing happening. Oh, we're still trying to decrypt the SB19 data and we haven't figured it out, or whatever. And we're all going to spend time focusing on Giorgio or something like that. And it's not going to be that interesting. So I'm concerned for this episode.
I mean, to be honest, I'm honestly fine. I'm fine with it honestly being a filler episode if it's like a more character centric episode. My worry would be like, it's another like, oh, here's another annoying goalpost in the figuring out the burn thing. It's like, I'm fine with it even being like, all right, like the burn's being worked on in the background, and the burn's being worked on in the background. Yeah, exactly. I'm getting I'm enjoying them, and I like the episodic feel that they allow them, but I also feel like there does need to be a thing to.
There's a key to decrypt the data, and it's on Andoria. What?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's the same problem that Mandalorian this season's having too, to a degree, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like we need to go somewhere, but don't worry, we're going to crash on another planet before you get there. I feel like the next episode's going to do that, and if it does, I'm going to be slightly pissed off a little bit. But Dom, your thoughts on the next upcoming episode 8, and I'll give my thoughts off.
The next episode is called The Sanctuary.
Yes.
So I think it's definitely got to do something with Book. We've seen Sanctuary planets before, so it might be another Sanctuary planet.
Sanctuary.
With the giant lizards. With the giant lizard thing.
The giant transworms. We could see transworms again. We do see
the transworms. Sorry.
The transworms.
We do see. I think it's the Osira of the Emerald Chain, the leader.
Okay.
Although from what it seems, Osira also has the plasticky Orion look, which I'm not looking forward to. But hey, at least it's better than green face paint.
Wow.
And yeah, I think there'll be some Giorgio stuff to deal with. We see in the Ray Room. I don't think any of you talked much about the Ray Room content, but it was like Culber was talking to Giorgio about what's happening with her. It might maybe start setting up the Section 31 show, if that's still going on, which I believe it is.
Yeah.
So it could be like, oh, Giorgio's phasing out of time. We need to send her back to the 23rd century to start Section 31.
Yeah. We need to send her back to get her own show. Oh god.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the big theory that we all have, is that she's going to jump back. Yeah, and we don't know why or how. Something to do with the Discovery, something to do with Calypso, something to do with all that. Yeah,
we're theorizing, and I believe we can probably next week we can theorize a bit more, depending on how the episode goes and how that's going to happen, etc. So next week we can probably talk about a bit more. One thing, I'll talk about my thoughts for this episode. Obviously, the Emerald Chain looks like they're showing up at some point in the trailer, because we see Osira, and it looks like they do show up in a ship, I think. And I didn't get a good look at that in the trailer because I'm not broke it down yet. We'll be doing it this coming Tuesday. Our new writer, Andrew, who's fantastic with AJ, they'll be writing that one for us, and then I'll talk over it and breaking it down. Can't wait for that one. It looks like a ship shows up. I hope we get a view of like the Discovery's new upgrades and finally get to see her in action a bit more. Yes, this isn't a war series, etc., unlike season 1. However, I really want to see, what firepower upgrades Discovery has gotten with all this new tech. Again, it comes back to my earlier point where Discovery was upgraded in, episode 6? We barely sort of do anything. Episode 7, okay, she jumped to Navarre. Didn't really do much. We just changed the mess hall around. That was about it. However, I'd really like to see what the ship can do. Maybe some modified phasers. Really give us now a chance to, blow a bit more of a CGI budget out. Show us what these modern weapons look like in a way. And hopefully one quantum torpedo won't blow the entire bridge apart and, Sui won't be on his ass. So hopefully, we'll see how that goes. In terms of, Osira, hopefully they've been spending a lot of time building up this Emerald Chain. So hopefully that reward and took off air is going to be interesting, and we get more with villain. Hopefully, it's not like a one episode villain where she shows up and Discovery torpedoes her in the face, and that's the end of that villain. Because if so, it might be a bit of a. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave my comments to that until a bit. Well, she does, to be honest. Yeah, it's just bang. Danny Shields for $10 says Ken Mitchell still due to show up this season. Could be Sanctuary. Be Borath. Also, Orions and his skill are 10 times better than Enterprise.
Do we know Ken Mitchell is showing up?
I don't know. I've not heard that. Is it?
Or is that just like he's appeared in every season? So
yeah, we think
he has to
appear
in this season. It'd be nice if he appeared, but I don't think we have any confirmation that he's appearing.
No.
Yeah, we'll have to
None
see.
whatsoever.
I've not heard him at myself.
Yeah.
Could Sanctuary be Borath? I'm gonna say probably not.
Yeah,
I would say
don't
no.
want it to be.
I'm not sure.
Though it would be
Sanctuary's the episode
interesting
name
to
is-
go into Klingon territory, but
Yeah,
I
we'll
don't
explore
think
that,
they
yeah.
will, because then they have to talk about, are we using TNG Klingon makeup?
I
or
feel
are
like
we
that's
using
something they
Discovery
want to
Klingon
steer
makeup?
away from, and this brings us back to our earlier
I don't
discussion
think
of
they can't do that this
Discovery's
season.
got a lot or a big sandbox to play with right now. I feel like
Yes.
they're steering away from like Romulans, Cardassians, Klingons, because that is almost a bit of a too much. I feel like they don't want to go and touch with Klingons again, because anyone at CBS knows if they go and do that and do it one way, it'll reignite a big online discussion and potentially some controversy on how Discovery are doing with Klingons. If they go back and do TNG era
25%
makeup,
different.
they're gonna it's gonna be that again. We all know.
Oh,
this
you went
conversation
back on
really
it.
doesn't pop up.
We won. No.
Exactly. You know, and I feel like they want to start season 3 off fresh and just do it like get it stable at season 3. This is the new Star Trek Discovery. Then in season 4 or 5, whatever, we can play around with Klingons and Romulans, etc. Obviously, we've got Romulans today. You know what I mean? No, we can play around with these other species and explore more of them, etc. And play with that. I feel like that's the best way they're potentially going to do it a bit more. And hopefully that's, maybe we'll see Klingon show up. I mean, we already saw Cardassian in last week's episode, wasn't it, of a captain's meeting where there's a Cardassian captain, which is interesting.
And we heard
female
references to Bajoran. We saw Bajoran too in last episode.
Yes,
too.
I believe we did.
Yeah,
and we saw the Bajoran exchange that's been referenced as well. Presumably that is in Bajor. I'd love to know what happened to DS9 at this point, to be honest. I think many of us DS9 fans would love to happen. Again, it comes back to me, there is a lot of time. There was a lot of stuff for Discovery to explore in Season 3, and I don't think we're going to get all our answers in Season 3. I'm perfectly fine with that, because Discovery is definitely staying in the 32nd century. I think Season 4 and 5, or maybe even 6, how many we get, will explore the future of Discovery's 32nd century. Thank you all for your donations once again. You've asked more questions. John, thank you for the $10 donation. Danny Shields 5 says 100% confirm that Ken is showing up by him and Disco Team. Okay, cool. I must have missed that. If you could link that to one of us on Twitter or at the Trek Central, I'd love to see that, because I must have missed
Also,
that myself.
Bjorn put a message after it, so
did they?
that thing.
Could you read it as my chat windows for
Bjorn says, will they meet other branches of the Federation that have been isolated and broke a bit bad?
Good
So that
question. We
goes
did
back to
discuss
our
this.
Federation
Yes.
idea.
Yeah.
We did discuss this earlier in the stream. This will become a VOD after we stop going live, so you can rewind and check it out for yourself. As much as I'd love to go more than that, we have run over our running time.
But
which
yes,
is
the answer is we hope
So-
they do.
We should have you on again, Jesse. It's been a pleasure, because we've really had a lot of insightful discussions today. And
Thanks.
I feel like we could be here for another hour or two at least. We amount
Oh,
of stuff
easily,
we'll
yeah.
talk about.
Yeah. Oh,
I hated every second of this. This was torture for me.
Well,
so.
I wish I'd got
I can tell it on your face. I can see
Yeah,
it.
oh god, I hate everything.
I wish I'd let Nick host now. I could have had a day off.
No, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. You were all wonderful. It was a great time. I thank you for having me, and I'd love to come back anytime.
Of course. And just for our viewers, where can people find you in the great sphere of the internet? Where can people find yourself?
You can find me on my own channel, Jesse Gender, where I talk about Star Trek, The Mandalorian, and also a bunch of other stuff like LGBTQ issues as they come up in pop culture and geek stuff. So that's all there. You can also follow me on all the social medias at Jesse Gender, but I'm usually on Twitter ranting about some such nonsense or whatever, whatever's pissing me off at 4 a.m. And I also have a Patreon that you can help me pay the bills. So those are all the main things.
Of course, and guys, make sure to go check out Jesse's channel. I hope we'll have you back on very soon, as it has been a truly pleasure to have you on here once again.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, Nick, Dom, I believe we've discussed every aspect of this episode we possibly could today, and more.
I think we could do more.
Yeah, we could do more. Next week, we'll be back with, obviously, episodes 8 discussion. 3 of us should be here again. We do hopefully have a special guest on, who I will hint to you in a week, and I'm glad to get them on, as we've been wanting to get them on for quite some time now. So I'll be teasing that in a week, so keep an eye out for it. In the meantime, thank you very much to everyone who has viewed the stream. It's been a pleasure, as always, to live stream here. And thank you for over 200 viewers at one point, over 100 likes, and a hell of a lot of donations. You've kept me busy all evening reading these ones, but we do appreciate it. You know, we've got a lot going on here at the Trek Central channel right now. Some announcements coming soon. My hair can't stay in one place. I do apologize for constantly doing that this evening. Fucking hair issue.
Why do you think I wore the hat?
That's
Yeah.
a good idea. I was thinking, I was like, we should really do a TC Christmas stream. If so, I know Dom and Nick are going to force me to wear a Santa hat. I just know it's going to happen.
Yes, you absolutely are going to have to wear a Santa hat.
Does
Hello.
does that mean Dom can do it? Because we need to see him out of that beanie and into a Santa
He
hat,
gets a
to be honest.
Santa beanie, which
Santa
is just
beanie,
the
yeah.
white and the red top. That's it.
Yeah, I'll go for that.
To be
It's
honest, I
Santa
do now
beanie.
have some TC beanies here because Dom requests them so
Yeah.
much. They are in my living room currently. And they
You're
may
meant
make
to.
it
Well,
up to Dom soon.
thanks for hoarding them, I guess.
There's only
Teasing.
two, Nick. There's only two. Or you can have a
Yeah,
limited
two for
edition
me.
Captain Jack hoodie, your choice.
Yeah,
A
signed
limited
by
edition,
you.
There's three, and I'm keeping one. So
That's
there's
right.
two.
That's
We'll
right.
send them over. TC merch coming very soon. Maybe next year, actually. So if anyone wants to see that, do let us know. Once again, everyone, thank you very much for streaming. No, we're streaming. Thank you very much for joining. That's what you've done. We're the ones streaming. It's been a long bloody week. We'll see you very soon, obviously, for Discovery, Episode 8, The Sanctuary. Don't miss our episode preview breakdown and speculation this Tuesday. That's where we break down the trailer and Ready Room clip and speculate on what we think might happen there. That's Tuesday at around 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. GMT. Hope to see you there. As you know, we love our theories and many more things. We've also got a comic review coming this week for Deep Space Nine, Too Long a Sacrifice, I think. Or is it Year 5? It's Year 5, I think. One of the comics.
I think
which is
it's
going on
year
there.
5.
Yes, we
this
did DS9 last week. So
Yeah.
we've got
Yeah.
Year 5 coming this week. Don't forget to miss that. Jacob, our comic writer and expert, has been doing a great job writing those. So I can't wait to explore that one, as I think this might be the final of Year 5 or might be the second to last one. Either way, explore it, as it's going to be quite fun. Anyway, for now, I've been Jack here, your host on Trek Central for this evening, joined by my co-host Dom, Nick, and our special guest Jesse. Everyone, thank you for joining. Live long and prosper. Don't you give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute. And of course, we'll see you very soon. Goodbye, everyone.